in, and then folks who kind of flow in, we'll just welcome them as they do. So welcome to the Business of Health Career Networks program. This is our panel, as I mentioned before, on digital health technology and health innovation. Thank you all for joining us this evening for the panel, which is part of the UNC Center for the Business of Health Career Networks program. Career Networks is a constellation of resources meant to educate and create community around the continuously evolving healthcare ecosystem. You can explore the CBOH Career Networks platform via the URL pasted in the chat box, and I'm going to send that out to you all. I'll paste it again later on so that if folks flow in, they'll be able to see that as well. For tonight's panel, we ask that you turn your video on and mute your microphone while not asking questions. If you are in clinic or somewhere where you cannot share your camera, we understand. So go ahead and if you need to put any questions, you can do those in the chat, and that's just fine. But if you are available and not in clinic, we do ask that we have our cameras on. Tonight's panel will begin with our guests introducing themselves. Then I'll be asking some moderated questions, stopping every 2 questions for the audience to go ahead and ask their questions. When you have a question, please raise your virtual hand. And that's down in the bar. At least mine is kind of like a little heart under React. And if you click that, I noticed in one of our last panels, a lot of folks were like, I can't find my hand. And some of you might just be able to wave, but that's where it is if you need to access that. And also feel free that during, like even if it's in between those 2 question pauses, you can raise your hand if you've got a burning question that you have to ask, or if you need just to add something to the conversation, because that's what we want this to be tonight, a discussion where everybody learns and shares. I'm Suzanne Killian. I'm the Associate Director for Student Engagement with the Center for the Business of Health, and I have Erin Leach, our Program Manager behind the scenes tonight, who is furiously letting people in as they're still arriving. Tonight, I'm lucky to have 3 outstanding panelists, Natalie Alvarez, Hart, and Jake Petralia. And Alex, you'll have to repeat that because I probably did not pronounce that correctly. They're going to be sharing their career journeys and introduce you to the industries from their diverse perspective. So right now, I'm going to let our panel take it away, and I'll let Natalie start.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining today. Looking forward to speaking with all of you. I'm Natalie Alvarez, and I started off with my undergrad at Keenan Flagler Business School. So I had a BSBA, and then after that, I started my career in finance on Wall Street. So I worked as an investment banking analyst. Then I moved internally to one of our clients and did strategy, corporate development, and investor relations. And I really enjoyed working alongside the C-suite on major projects, including an IPO and rebranding, divestiture, various corporate aspects. But I really wanted to get back to healthcare. That had been a longstanding interest of mine. So I pursued an MBA and MPH from Columbia and thought that I wanted to be COO of a hospital. So I did stints at large academic medical centers around the country, working on operational improvement projects and business development plans. Really enjoyed it, but wanted to be closer to the technology side of things. I saw how difficult it was to implement new technology. And so after grad school, made the jump into the health tech world and really haven't looked back. So I'm on my 3rd startup now. At each one, I've been essentially the first non-founder executive. My first role out of business school was actually on the customer success side. So I oversaw all of our customer relationships and implementations of software suites into large clinics and practices. And from there, I've been able to migrate into the product side of things. So my current role is as product director at Ramona. It's a small microscopy startup based in downtown Durham, and we develop ultra high-speed microscopes for drug development. And I oversee the product development process and really enjoy being the glue between our customers and our engineers. Thanks, everybody.
Terrific. Alex, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hart. So Suzanne, you said it right. And I graduated undergrad from University of South Carolina with a degree in international business and supply chain. So right out of school, I was in a supply chain and operations rotational program. So I moved around quite a bit and eventually landed in Chicago, where I found I did not want to commute at least an hour each way. And so I ended up in consulting. I started as an analyst with Slalom Consulting in downtown Chicago, and the majority of our clients out of that market were in healthcare. So I sort of fell into healthcare through consulting. Um, I worked on a joint venture in the specialty pharmacy space, which was really interesting and quite eye-opening and kind of scary. And then I ended up at Healthcare Services Corporation, which is like 5 or 6 different health plans based out of Chicago again. And I worked on a variety of roles there. They were my client for about 2 or 3 years. So basically worked at HCSC. But I did a lot of large scale technical implementations. And then I also worked in their special client programs implementation. So any of their employer clients like Boeing and AT&T who had very specific requirements for their employer health programs were things that I led all of the implementation for. Then I went to a smaller boutique consultancy because I wanted to move sort of further upstream in the strategy process. And so I led our digital strategy team, and a couple of clients I worked with Humana, Guardian Life Insurance, and a couple other ones. The coolest thing I did was launching a virtual primary care solution for Blue Cross Blue Shield members out of Maryland. So that was really exciting. So I led the product and engineering teams on that. Then I decided I wanted to go back to school. So I did my part-time MBA through UNC, graduated in 2023. And while I was in my program, I started with Highmark Health, which is where I am currently. They're a health plan based out of Pittsburgh. I started on an innovation team there as an innovation manager. So I was partnering with various business units across the company, kind of understanding what some of their business pain points were, operational pain points, and then understanding like what types of new, mainly startups we could bring into the company to help kind of change things up, change the way we work. If any of you know health insurance, it doesn't change much. So it was quite an interesting role. And ultimately, that team did get disbanded, and then I moved back into internal consulting for Highmark. And currently, I work as a strategy partner, which is sort of like a chief of staff role in provider data and operations. And so basically what that means is any provider that is in network with Highmark has to go through my team first to get credentialed, get all their data correct in our system, and then have all their contracts and all of that run through, as well as special pricing. So it's a lot of work. There's a lot that's ripe for innovation, I would say, in that space. So it's really exciting. And I own and oversee all of our metrics and reporting. I'm revamping all of our workforce sort of practices. So that involves a lot of like training, knowledge management, workflow optimization, and things like that.
Terrific. Thank you. And Jake?
All right, it's my turn. Hey, everybody. Really happy to be here. I'm Jake Petralia. I guess I started way back in the day. No, I did my undergrad at Stanford University. I got a degree in human biology. I was pre-med and I thought I wanted to become a doctor. So after graduating, I went and did 3 years of clinical research at the Stanford Hospital in neurology and neurosurgery. And while for some that might make you closer to wanting to become a physician, for me, it actually pointed me in the other direction. I realized it wasn't something I wanted to do, but I still really loved healthcare. So naturally, instead of going down the clinician route and wanting to be in healthcare, I actually jumped ship and joined an e-commerce startup, which it just was the opportunity presented itself. I wanted to do something different. And I spent a year and a half kind of doing just jack of all trades, operations, marketing, kind of anything that they would throw at us. And then I actually went to UNC and I got my MBA and my Master's of Science in Public Health. Spent 3 years there, 2 internships. First internship was at Humana in a retail strategy group. Really liked the Humana mission. I could see myself there. Second internship, I went back to Humana, but it was actually one of their innovation arms, which was called Transcend Insights at the time. And that was a combination of interoperability, digital experiences, and population health. And then upon graduating from UNC, I actually went back to Transcend Insights as a product strategy and marketing. I had some weird title at the time, but that was my focus. And I spent another 3 years there doing mostly product marketing. And then we got absorbed as an independent subsidiary of Humana into Humana, and I became what we call a strategy advancement advisor, or something along those lines, ultimately getting to the director level. In what was called the digital health and analytics, and the de facto innovation arm for Humana around AI and machine learning, interoperability, digital experiences, anything that kind of was new and kind of trying to transform Humana from a more tech-forward company. And then naturally, with innovation at large companies like that, it kind of blew up, and I went into the clinical strategy arm of Humana, and I was really focused on utilization management. And then I was headhunted to join Icaro, where I'm now the head of product. And what Icaro does is we take a dynamic omni-channel approach. So imagine email, SMS, mail, any channel live agent, and we engage members to get them to do the things that health plans need them to do, whether it's fill out a health risk assessment, close gaps in care, go schedule an annual wellness visit, et cetera, with incentives or without incentives. And been here for almost 3 years, I guess 3 years in March, which isn't almost, so I'm about 2.5 years in, and it's been quite the journey. So that's my story.
Terrific. And again, audience, you can see how diverse and interesting that kind of like technology can be throughout, many different verticals, as we might call them in healthcare, but also across functions. I think everybody did a great job talking about kind of the steps that you took to get to your role. But what I would like to ask is for you to tell us a little bit further about what exactly is your job role right now, and what skills, abilities, and experiences do you use regularly, like most often in the role? So tell us a little bit more about that.
I can start, I suppose, although you just heard my voice for like 10 minutes. But my job, well, I was hired at Icaro to stand up a product team from the ground up. And I will say I have never led products or been a product manager before taking on this role. So completely new kind of venture for me. But I know the CEO really well. I report to him, and there's a lot of trust. To this point now, 2.5 years in, my day-to-day is really just trying to keep my team focused. I mean, people management is kind of like the main part. It doesn't matter. A lot of the stuff I've done in the past just provides me perspective from which to like point my team, keep them motivated, put out fires, because fire drills are a very common thing, I think, for most folks at this stage. And just being able to think critically about prioritizing work, what's important, where should you spend your time? I mean, in the past, I've definitely been, you could say, an analyst, for lack of a better term. I'm really good at PowerPoint and spreadsheets. But that was a vehicle for me to be able to figure out how do you message and understand the right things for other executives or people of different disciplines to either know what's happening, keep them informed, or to make decisions. And I would say that is a very standard part of my day-to-day. But now that I'm not doing a lot of the analyses, I have to make sure my team knows how to be as effective as they can to do them and to make so that we can make decisions at my level.
I'll piggyback on that. I would agree that the people management part is such a critical piece of it. Right now, what we're really trying to do is manage culture. Well, maybe not manage culture, but revamp the culture of the team. So some of our teams have tenures of like 28 years or more. At health insurers, that's not rare, but I would say for my area, it's pretty spectacular, I guess you could say. And so with that comes its own set of challenges, just in like motivating people, getting them to use and understand new tools, getting them to use Gen AI is quite interesting. So I would say that's a big part of my role. I'm changing a lot of how they've done things in the past 28 years. So bringing people along on the journey and learning how to tell a story as to like why we're doing what it is that we're doing, why we're doing it, and how it will impact them, is really important. And then I would say one of the other things that I do day to day is our metrics and reporting. So prior to me coming on board, they didn't really have any way to tell the rest of the business how our particular team is doing. And it's a really, really critical function that we perform for the health plan. If providers aren't brought in network and credentialed, then Highmark doesn't have providers to help you with your care. And so prior to me coming on board, or we had like a huge backlog of credentialing applications and things like that. And there was no way for leadership to understand what they could do to help. To Jake's point of putting out fires, it was like constantly just putting out fires, not looking ahead to see like, oh, in 6 months, we might have another backlog. And so a large part of my role right now is defining what are our key performance indicators for others to understand how well we're actually doing and to tell the story of like, this is sort of how we're performing today, but also where we want to be in the future. And that requires a lot of people management too, because people don't often like their work being tracked and then presented up to executive leadership. So that's another reason why like bringing people along on the journey is a huge part of the role.
Great. Totally agree with those responses. I'll take a little bit more tactical approach to kind of explaining what I do day to day. And I think a good story for that is just early this year, we launched a brand new product. It's called the Vireo. It's what we consider to be the world's fastest microscope. It's pretty neat. It has 24 objective lenses, whereas most microscopes have one. And this technology has evolved over the last 4 years. I've been at the company. It was primarily used in a completely different kind of use case, different market. And so what I've had to do is lead the process of taking in external feedback from the market, understanding what customers are looking for, what they need, and where this cool new technology could actually make an impact and drive revenue. And then work with our engineers and our field application scientists to think through what are the features that need to be part of that, finalizing what was going to be part of both our hardware and our software in terms of acquiring images and then analyzing those images, beta testing. So we had an early access program that I oversaw last year where we gave essentially a prototype system to 5 large research institutes around the world and just let them try to break it and try it on a lot of different applications. And that helped us finalize what were those features that were going to be part of the product launch. And then meanwhile, I was managing several different vendors in terms of a product marketing agency that was helping us prepare all the marketing aspects needed for our launch with regards to, everything from messaging to content to planning demos to planning our trade show launches. And then also a contract manufacturing organization to help us redesign the physical structure of the product. And so taking this very big, ambiguous task of how are we going to bring this product to market and breaking it down. And so, and in addition to the people management, it's a lot of project management. And I built those skills, starting in undergrad at Keenan Flagler, then working in investment banking, working in hospitals, and then my MBA and MPH, all those skills kind of built on each other, and I still have to use them every single day in terms of breaking it down into concrete steps that are less big and ambiguous and scary, and that I can and then work with the team, as Jake said, to figure out how to motivate them. How do I get our engineers excited about building in the features? How do I communicate what our customers are telling us in terms of the value that it's going to provide? And then how am I ultimately going to get it in their hands? So it's been a really exciting process. And before this, you didn't have formal training in product management either. It really started with being in customer success. And so I think Suzanne will get to that, but that was a great stepping stone, is having background in operations and being essentially the first line of defense in terms of customer support. Really learning the value of the voice of the customer and then moving into building my engineering knowledge.
Terrific. And again, you all did just as you said, broke it down, told your story, so we know a little bit more about your role. So those were wonderful, you know, explanations and stories about your role. So I'm gonna, since we've kind of gone through about 2 questions, I kind of sandwiched 2 together. I'm going to put it out to the audience to start asking some of their questions tonight. Again, just raise your digital hand and we can go ahead and get your questions out there. It's always the first question. That's what Erin had said earlier. So again, too, this is a great opportunity for the audience to ask anything you would like to know.
Somebody's got a question.
I see it. I see them wanting to ask. So I'm going to give it a few more silent seconds. All right, Nita, hey, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, first of all, thank you everyone for giving your time to us. There are a lot of heavy words, and I just picked up on one of the many. I would like to understand from Jake what utilization management meant for him at work.
You gotta go. Oh, I am off mute. Okay, cool. Yeah, I had to go back in time. Utilization management in this case was making sure, well, I guess from the health plan lens, it's prior authorization and getting members. And I'm sure that Alex and Natalie also may have a perspective on this, but making sure that members are getting the most appropriate care ultimately. And there's different definitions by which appropriate care is determined, but there's a whole process, whether it's inpatient or outpatient, does a procedure, et cetera, get approved by the health plan before it can get administered by clinicians, and whether or not it's approved can be covered by the plan and their benefits ultimately. It's a major pain point for patients across the board, but it's a very important part of health plans managing their costs and being able to forecast what their expenses are going to be.
I'll just add into, this is an area I know at least at Highmark we're investing in heavily. Take that for what you will. Jake, I think you explained it perfectly, but yes, this is an area that it has a lot of attention to it because it can have a huge impact on Highmark Health, excuse me, and like our operational expenses and things like that.
Terrific. Thank you. All right, Muriel.
Hi, yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. This is really, really fascinating. Alex, you kind of touched on just challenges that your team faces with generative AI specifically. And so I wanted to kind of open the floor to all of you guys to ask, like, how have you seen that progress in the past, like, 5 years or so, and affect like your team dynamics and how you approach your strategy?
I would say mine's maybe the most unique just based on the demographics, typically at a plan. I would say people are scared of it. I think there's a lot of fear that AI will replace them. And that's a lot of the culture and people management stuff that I have to do, and trying to slow roll it and then focus on those who will be adopters and users of our Gen AI solutions is where I spend the most time. So to Jake's point, like thinking about priorities and how you focus your energy and where, I would say as it relates to Gen AI, what I've, especially today, I had an example of this today of just some sort of snarky comments about AI and how it's all like out to get them and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? This is just something where I have to focus my energies on the people who will be early adopters of it and drive its use. So I would say in terms of like how I've seen it change in the last 5 years. 5 years ago, we did not have an internal Gen AI tool, and now we do. And it's pretty powerful, and that's very cool to see. They've also been developing it, like they release new features very, very often, which is cool to see at a health plan as well, because we don't usually move super quickly. And so to see so much investment in this tool and so many new features released so quickly is really awesome. I hope that answers your question.
And something I'll layer on top of what Alex just said is what, at least what we're experiencing from our side at Icaro, is what Alex just described is like internal self-driven adoption of Gen AI. Is that right? Correct, Alex? Right. So that's them going through all of their own compliance and evaluating what is something that they can put, what they can assume the risk for, knowing that they have control over how it's used. On the flip side, as like a vendor, which Icaro is, if we want to say, hey, like especially as an omni-channel engagement vendor, if we would say, hey, we're going to start using agentic AI to outreach to your members, there is a whole slew of compliance and just hurdles that we would have to go through to make sure, especially today with a lot of what is being introduced to the market, is to Alex's point, like things are coming out regularly, right? What is actually a safe application of AI that vendors like myself are exposing to health plans that keeps patient information safe, that doesn't expose patients or members to information that that might be misleading, right? If a system hallucinates or something, right? So there's a huge, I think from an internal self-driven like cultural change component, like it could be a really great, what is it, a way to drive efficiencies, but from like a vendor solution, I just want everyone to think about it. There's a lot of excitement around Gen AI, but being one that's trying to sell it, especially in the healthcare space, is going to be hyper scrutinized and might actually be slower to market than you think.
Yeah, I think these are all really important points. I'm at a 15-person company, and so we're quite, nimble, forward-looking. We had an AI week several months ago, and we all had to adopt AI for at least one workflow, and a lot of us are using it for prospecting, emails or various things, even helping our prospective customers write grants, right? Taking language and then drafting grants to be able to try to purchase our technology. And overall, it's generally, quite accepted for those cases. It's definitely scrutinized as a vendor. We're a vendor as well, and we're using machine learning tools with our imaging and image processing. And right now, we're not approved for diagnostic or clinical use, so it's just for research purposes only. And our customers have been quite excited to adopt it because, for example, trying to identify and then segment different types of biological samples like cells or 3D tissue structures is quite difficult. And there's a lot of error that can happen during the manual process, especially when you're looking at, thousands and thousands of samples that you want to label and categorize and measure. And so we've been really excited to build tools for that. And we've found that we've been able to customize models that are quite accurate, but totally agree with Jake. There's a lot of scrutiny there, and we've had to work really hard to build trust with our clients. And I think it'll be a continual process of building trust in the market for those tools. But we're really excited to be working on them from the research front, and then hopefully eventually it will move into the diagnostic and clinical arena as well.
Thank you.
Terrific. That was a great overview of so many perspectives about AI, and I know that's such a hot topic right now. So thank you all for giving us a little bit of a lens in to each of your areas. All right, Tanya.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for your time. My question to Natalie is like you said that you led the product strategy team for the Perio, if I'm not pronouncing it incorrectly. So how much of a product sense was required before you joined the team, and how much of it did you learn on the job? because health tech, you need a prior experience in everything. So I just want to pick your brain on that.
Sure. Great question. Yeah, I feel like having led, smaller kind of product feature launches and product extensions at previous companies that I was part of, not in a direct product role, but in this kind of implementation role, having the voice of the customers, hearing from our customers, and then translating that to our engineers, and then implementing those features. I essentially learned what it was like to be a product manager, and I started to learn a lot of just the lingo around software and user experience. And then I moved to the company that I'm at now, and I knew next to nothing about hardware or optics. And also on the machine learning side of imaging and image analysis, that was not the same kind of terminology. Much of it was different, but some of it was the same. But I think a lot of the core principles held, and I've been at this company now for almost 5 years. And so the first few years, we're really learning the technology and more so strategically thinking about the market and where our product could be a good fit. So there was a lot of kind of customer discovery, speaking to customers in our target markets, and essentially launching, bolt-on features to our original product that really were sticking. And so then from there, it's like, okay, I think we have something here where we need to get funding and now launch a completely new product that's really moving fully into this market. And so it was kind of an incremental stepwise process, but then we went all in and said, okay, we're going to formally launch a brand new commercial product so that we'll have essentially 2 microscopes. And yeah, it just built on past experience and then learning all of the technical details. And I would say that I'm still not an engineer, right? And I enjoy that, and that's something that I struggle with in the role, that I think anyone in product management will tell you. It's quite challenging trying to be the high level person driving these goals forward while not getting too much in the weeds and the technical piece and leaving that to our experts. But I really enjoy that kind of push and pull and being the person that ultimately has to be responsible and accountable for it in our customers' hands, and making sure that I'm understanding how it's working for them and translating that back to our engineering team because they don't have that perspective. So yeah, to answer your question, I think having the operations experience and just having that experience of working with customers and understanding their pain points and figuring out how to very clearly document those and provide those to the engineering side of the house was really where it started. And then from there just grew into a full, oversight of the product development process.
Thank you so much. That was insightful.
Anita.
Yeah, hi again. I have been in a role that Natalie, you talked about, where you're the bridge between the engineer and a healthcare client. Faced a lot of challenges there. Was curious about one particular challenge that you've faced, wherein there was friction between the two, the client and the engineers, and how you managed that.
Yeah, that's a great question. There are so many different challenges that I could speak to. One is just at the more process level. So just as an anecdote, about 2 months ago, I got a message from a customer saying, "Hey, we just noticed this amazing new feature in our software. I'd never seen this before. I tried using it. It worked really well for this. Totally didn't work for this. It seems like there's a bug here. Can you look into this?" And I had to talk to our engineering team and say, hey, was something released to this customer that I wasn't aware of and that they weren't aware of? And it turns out, yes, there was a release that happened. And essentially this half-baked feature was pushed to them without any communication. And when you're at a small company and you're moving very quickly, there's not always a lot of process in place. And I've had to be that stickler for process, especially now that we have 2 commercial products, really trying to nail down what the process should look like in terms of taking feedback and then developing new features, communicating those features, scheduling releases, providing those releases, being prepared to support any issues that come up from those releases. And that's been a little bit painful because our CTO in particular wants to move really quickly, and he's not as much of a process person, and that kind of trickles down to the engineers on his team. And I don't have direct managerial oversight of them, right? So I'm kind of walking that fine line, but really trying to implement process, because it's obviously going to be better for everyone if we can be transparent about what we're developing, and also make sure that, yes, this is actually what the customer is looking for and it is going to solve their pain points, and then following through and communicating when it's coming so they can know what to expect and it's not going to be disruptive of their workflows. That's just one piece. And then, along the beta testing process over the past year, we've had a bunch of issues come up. Not really issues, but for example, some of our customers saying, hey, these images just aren't crisp enough. Like, you don't have the resolution that you are saying that you have. When I compare it to this other microscope, I can see this detail within the cell. I can't see that with your microscope. And going back and forth with our engineering team and seeing what we could do from the hardware side, if we can improve those lenses, which ultimately we decided to accelerate that process and put in higher resolution lenses, which was quite a stretch, but we were able to get it done before our product launch. And then also on the image processing side, there were a few things we could do with contrast to boost that and get it to a point where the images were coming across as more crisp and more competitive with other microscopes that were being used in our beta testers' labs. And so some of those conversations were painful because we needed to pivot and make some adjustments. But having that very tangible feedback documented and being able to show slides with comparison images and say, this is why we need to get there, was enough to convince our team to buy in and pursue those changes.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Natalie.
Right, Leah.
Thank you all for today's session. It's really insightful. I also have a question towards Natalie, but anybody can also help me on like other parts of this question. But my question was, so I know that advanced and emerging technology in healthcare obviously is really there's always new things coming up every day, new better technology coming up, and always there's a kind of demand or like request for like more features coming in. But I want to know like if there was time in like production or like this like putting the technology, like was there any time that maybe you kind of step back because of like users are not kind of you kind of realize that user is not really demanding that advanced technology in their workforce, and then maybe pivot the plan of the product or the feature of the product? And how did that process look like, and what was some challenges within that?
That's a great question. And I think that would be great for everyone if everyone could contribute a little bit to that, because I think everybody, yeah.
Absolutely. I guess I'll start because you mentioned that. For me, I think that's a really good point. And for me, it's kind of understanding that the tipping point and the priority level. We've had some customers ask for what we thought were really fantastic features that maybe they could only do on our microscope, and that's something that we could eventually build into our product roadmap. But it was just going to be so time intensive and really only valuable for them that we just couldn't prioritize it unless we said, hey, if you're open to doing this on a custom development perspective and you'll pay us, separately for this development project, then we'll consider it. But otherwise, it's just not something anyone else is asking for right now. We don't think that it's going to be broadly applicable in the market, and we don't have other revenue, opportunities where people are demanding this. So we just had to say, sorry, we'll either prioritize this when you can pay for it, or we'll consider it down the road as more people ask for it.
Yeah, I can layer on next. I think it's an interesting question. I think, and Natalie kind of touched on this, right? Like, is there appetite for it in the market? Is a really big point. But sometimes that's either your direct customers, or it can be from research that indicates there might be demand elsewhere, right? And the oversimplified way to figure out, like from a prioritization lens, would be what is the value you anticipate getting from this work and what is the effort? And there's usually, you know, dozens of things you could do. And then what is the lowest effort and the highest value is usually going to dictate what you think you should do next. The thing is, you deliver something and your clients don't want it, right? So let's just say it's a low effort, high value. What if, but you say, okay, the near-term ROI probably isn't that high, but what if it actually gets you into a new market segment or expand your market share? You just have to get harness your sales team with the insights to go out and drive up demand for it, right? Part of that too is making sure that they know what's coming well ahead of time and not releasing things before they're supposed to be released, which is the big no-no. But it's not a straight line in any of this, especially in agile product development, that, like, you know, things can change. You might decide that this feature is more important than this feature on week 1, and then week 3 it switches around, right, based off of what you're learning and et cetera, et cetera. So it's definitely a science, but it's not one that's difficult to learn. And at the end of the day, you're going to release things, you're going to make strategic bets, and you're going to hope that they pay off one way or another. Sometimes you might deliver something that your clients are asking for, like, every day, and it ends up being a dud, right? It's just, there's things that happen. You just don't know until it's out there in the wild.
So I don't have so much of this type of experience in my current role, but pulling from some of my past consulting roles where I did play like the product manager role, or sort of the go-between between engineering and the customer. I think one of the most important things, no matter what type of process you're running or how you're running your product development teams, I always like to lean on a framework or some sort of like tried and true practice. So whether that's like your agile principles or like a prioritization matrix or something that you can always objectively point back to. And if I'd really like to doing sessions like with a customer or with whoever it is, so that you can like physically move things around on the prioritization matrix or something like that, so that you all have buy-in to it. And then when the feature is released, or you do get to the point where you're like, okay, do we all agree on this prioritization and this set of features? Then hopefully there's consensus there, or as much consensus as you can get. It's not always perfect, but I think if you have a framework, it's at least something to start from, and then people kind of trust in it. And I do think UNC has done a really good job in teaching frameworks, or at least my program did, in giving you frameworks you can use in a lot of different ways, and then make it flexible to your own use case or whatever you need it for. I know I sound very consultant-y too with that, but I do think it works.
Yeah.
It's important, because at the end of the day, like, we could have 40 clients asking for 40 different things, but if you can only build 3 of them, what's it going to be? A framework helps figure that out with making it more objective.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Yes. Again, that was an excellent overview, an answer to that question. Since we're hearing a lot about what you do, it sounds like you solve problems really well. You have kind of skill sets that seem to, you know, help you work very well within multiple situations. So I'm going to ask, since we've got a lot of students here, what skills and experiences do you use most that from your undergrad or graduate education? And I'm going to make this 2-part, because in that, maybe pull out a few of those skills that you do use, but what skills and experience do you wish you would have gotten that would have contributed to what you do now? So again, some skills that you use from your undergrad or graduate education, and what do you wish you had gained skill-wise or experience-wise?
I can start. I think one of the things that both grad school and my undergrad taught me was critical thinking, and like, again, going back to this idea of frameworks, like how to take something that you have and can show and use to other people, and then communicating its use to people, and critically thinking about like, what does this particular situation need? Is it a prioritization framework, or is it just like an open roundtable discussion, or is it like really top-down management and someone just kind of like laying down the law? Like those are the sorts of things that I think my undergrad and grad school really taught me as to how to assess a situation, how to create a solution if there is a problem, and then how to communicate that or the solution really well and why we need a solution. And then I think too, like getting people's buy-in and influencing others, particularly if they're not in your direct like management chain, if you don't have responsibility over them. I think that's like another really key skill learned. I don't know yet about the other part of your question, so you can come back to me.
I can go next. So undergrad, I was human biology. Again, I don't think I can apply too much to like my career now, although like maybe research you could say is a piece that kind of fueled and underpinning like kind of discipline and how to think about how things are related. But I ran track and field undergrad and cross country, and I think that was probably a bigger part of like the way I like think about teamwork. And everyone, you're only as good as your fifth runner, I guess you could say, in cross country, right? I mean, there's you gotta just be part of a team, right? So I think that's a huge part of my own development, is just participating in track and cross country. In grad school, the first thing that came to mind, I'll be the first to say that undergrad, I was so bad at presentations that I got a horrible, horrible grade in a class because I completely bombed what is supposed to be one of the easiest things that you could do in this class, was give this tiny presentation. And I would like be the person that would like, forgive me if this is too much, but I would like take shots before presentations because I couldn't handle it. I was just too stressed. And then at Keenan Flagler, there was a presentation class. I think I took it in I don't know which year it was, but it simplified everything, and it forced you to like get into like the mix of how to present and try different approaches, what works for you, what doesn't. And now today, I don't even think twice about public speaking, right? Because it's something that I just started to do repeatedly. And I'd say that if you have chances to, if it's assuming it's going outside of your comfort zone to do public speaking, especially in a presentation context where you're trying to deliver key messages and not ramble, which is a hard thing to do. Just go out there and just put yourself out there and just do it. It'll pay off over time. I promise you, considering where I was and where I am now, like I mean, I have no jitters getting in front of this group today, right? So yeah. Also, one other thing, sorry, and I'll let Natalie go.
No, please.
I completely oversubscribed myself when I was at Keenan Flagler. Obviously, you have your core classes and everything, and especially in my second year when I was supposed to be only at the School of Public Health, I was also taking classes at Keenan Flagler. I was the president of the healthcare club, and I was also trying to do like what at the time was like Keenan Flagler, or with the Keenan Institute Leadership Fellows, and I was doing way too much. Obviously, I didn't want to sacrifice like my schoolwork, but at the same time, I'm not saying go out and overdo it, but it taught me how to prioritize myself and figure out what it is that like how I can manage my time and effort. Hindsight 2020, I did a little too much, but it was also something like all the exposure to people and thinking and networking and trying to get things done was, to me, was probably one of the best things, because then now I can manage it all in this crazy job that I have now. But right. Go ahead, Natalie.
No, such great answers. For me, undergrad, I did the entrepreneurship track. That was so hugely valuable. I would say absolutely take a course where you have to conceive of a business idea and go through the entire process of developing a business plan, doing a pitch to real investors, do a STAR class, do some type of consulting class so you can gain those frameworks and skills in terms of how to take these, nebulous projects and break them down and then present the impact that you're going to make. Those were just so hugely helpful for me in gaining skills in so many different areas. And I remember for one of my classes undergrad, I literally had to get in the elevator with my professor and give an elevator pitch. And that's something that you will just use no matter whatever job you pursue, being able to very succinctly give a pitch, whether it's a project or a product, it doesn't really matter. But being able to communicate the value of something in 2 minutes or less, I think is hugely helpful. And when I think about grad school and beyond, definitely just doing a ton of networking outside of class is what I really did in my dual degree program. Like Jake was saying, it was very time intensive hopping between the two campuses, but I did exactly what you all are doing tonight. I attended every single event like this. I knew next to nothing about, healthcare really, and all the different stakeholders and how they work together and the flow of money. And so I attended the boot camps and I attended the speaker events and I went and talked to every speaker afterwards and I set up coffee chats with people that I was interested in getting to know. And that really just helped me be confident going into interviews that I could speak about the industry and trends in the industry and where I thought my past experience could apply in making that transition. And so I think that's really helpful, especially if you're a career switcher. That was just as valuable as the coursework that I took. And the last thing I would say is I took one class, and I wish I remembered the exact name, but it was something called like Management for Decision Makers. And to Alex's point, it was about learning how to be in the role of managing or having a dotted line managerial relationship to engineers. And that was a really helpful course in just learning how to influence others without the technical expertise. And that's been really helpful for me in so many different ways, having to work with clinicians on operational improvement plans that they did not want to implement, having to work with scientists now where I don't have a hard biology background, but I need to know enough to be dangerous and speak to their applications, and working with engineers. And I would say what I wish I would have done, because only a small part of that course was coding, is I wish I would have actually taken an engineering course or two. I think that would have been really valuable. I think I have, a very minimal skill set now where I know just enough maybe, but I think I would be able to really connect with our engineers more and think through problem solving with them if I had taken that. So if that's an interest of you in getting into technology, I would say if you can, take a course in that.
Terrific. Great advice. And I know Natalie kind of said, I wish I would have. So Jake or Alex, is there anything, an experience or a course that you wish you would have taken either as an undergrad or in your graduate study?
See, I'm gonna let Alex answer first.
I think I have a different perspective. So I did the part-time online program. And I started like in 2021, which was like still a little COVID-y. And I did not go to Chapel Hill as much as I should have. I think it was just that weird time. So when Jake, you were saying you were so involved, I was very involved, but virtually, which has its own set of challenges. So I do wish I had gone to Chapel Hill for more in-person classes and things like that. And then also I do wish I had taken more on like the venture capital entrepreneurship side of things. I took some of the classes offered, but I wish I had done more with that post, after I graduated, or even prior to graduating, and really started to network in that space.
And I'm going to give a slightly different perspective, which is I wouldn't change anything about what I did. I mean, like, I think everyone on this call is going to make some decisions around what they think they should do next. Just do it, but do your best at it. You're going to learn from it. And you might find that you'll never use that experience again. But you might find it sends you down a whole different rabbit hole and career path than you expected. Right. So just don't second guess yourself. You're going to learn from everybody you talk to. Sign up for things, do it, but don't half-ass it. If you're going to do it, commit to it. Because then half-assing means the people are going to remember that you half-assed it, and then you're not going to, the whole networking thing goes downhill. So, yeah.
And terrific advice all around. I just love those responses, and I think that the audience should take those to heart. All right, so I think we're getting kind of close to the end here. So what I'm going to do is wrap up with a question that I think might be valuable to everybody. And that would be, what trends do you see in the next 10 years for your industry or your type of role, or kind of just what you do in this arena?
I'm gonna go back to the whole AI piece, and I don't mean from a everyone's gonna be buying it like everything. I mean, I think that's partially true in 10 years, but like think about how you can use it to make yourself more efficient. Learn how to use it as an extension of yourself. Don't rely on it, but figure out how it can benefit you to make make more of you, right? Or like if you're not good at engineering, like so you're not going to build your own website by hand coding it, but you can use vibe coding and just type in some word prompts and develop something yourself, right? Which I've been spending a ton of time doing because like in absence of being able to hire a really bona fide UX designer, I'm just going to spend a few hours a day typing in prompts, and it's amazing. So just think about how it can benefit you. You'll have tons of opportunities to figure it out. That doesn't answer the question directly at all, but
No, yeah, I think AI is definitely going to continue to be a trend, and so just learning more about, both from like your own perspective, like Jake said, and also just how it impacts the industry that you're moving into and how that might be incorporated into products and new technology would be really helpful, I think. Beyond that, being on my side of the house, selling into the life sciences space, there's obviously been a whole lot of change this year. And we launched this new product, and a lot of our, market essentially disappeared because they don't have funding. And I think that that's going to be a continuing evolving situation. And we're having to be really creative about thinking about how to target more so industry and pharmaceutical companies, for example, and just really having to hone in on the value that our product can offer to these different target groups. We thought it would be an easier sell, and we're really having to be creative in terms of how to sell it, how to market it. And so, yeah, I don't really have great advice on that front, except I do think, staying on top of the news with regards to the funding situation and just thinking through how that impacts different stakeholders, especially for, the segment or the product or company that you're heading into, will give you a head start.
yeah, it's painful right now.
I would say, and I don't know if this is wishful thinking or what, but I would say the greater transparency within the healthcare industry is hopefully to come. I think within health plans specifically, I hope that we continue to pioneer new uses and new, partnerships and things across the value-based care space. If that is something any of you are interested in or want to learn more about, it's all about how you're paying, how providers specifically are paid for outcomes and not just like providing sick care. So from a plan perspective, I personally think it's like a great way to really drive the health. And sorry if you guys can hear my dog, she's going insane. To drive the health of our various populations. And so I think too with Gen AI, I think there will be greater transparency. I think members and patients will demand more transparency and more of a hand in their care. I think we're already starting to see that. But I think they'll be demanding more and more from their health plans as well. So that's what I would say and wish for. I think we as healthcare consumers deserve it. And I think it really is time for the industry to change. I know we've been saying that forever. I'm like beating the drum, and I work at a health insurer, and I know how hard it is to change, but I really hope it's coming slowly but surely.
Yeah.
Terrific. Well, these all sound like positive thoughts for the future trends. Again, too, thank you for being a little bit beyond the AI or kind of being a little bit deeper with, the future of AI as well. But I want to thank everybody because I see we're just a minute away from 7 o'clock. Well, it just turned 7 o'clock, but I just want to thank everyone so much. I'm actually posting if you want to catch our next event, but we have many events throughout the rest of the fall. But I can't thank Jake, Alex, and Natalie enough for taking the time tonight. You have super interesting careers. I'm sure many of the audience members might follow in your footsteps. Again, too, y'all can find more about our guests on LinkedIn. So go ahead and check them out. But again, thank you so much. And as you can see, all of the virtual clapping coming up, and we hope to see you all in the future. So everybody have a great night, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.
Yo, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.